welcome to the Penthouse Perspective. I'm Lynetta Linda. Today I'm going to talk about self-sabotage. Ooh, it's a big subject. Did you know that self-sabotage, the kind I'm talking about, is actually your ego trying to protect you? In order to understand this, we need to understand the perspective that the ego holds about life. The ego doesn't like change. The ego likes predictability. The ego likes everything to stay the same. So when we start to make changes in our life, the ego will, in the unconscious, start to sabotage us because it doesn't like change. It sees it as a threat. So it'll start to throw things up at us, seemingly inconsequential things that are enough to sabotage us, to slow us down, or to stop that change that the ego considers to be so disastrous, so fearful. We have to recognize that in order to grow, we need to leave our comfort zone, and that is not something that the ego likes to do. So if you're trying to move forward, if you're trying to change circumstances in your life, and you feel like you're self-sabotaging, have a conversation with your ego. Start to practice tools to comfort your ego. Things like self-validation, things like self-support. Have tools around you, recognizing that as you begin to make change, the ego is going to pitch a fit, try to stop you, and you can have tools prepared in advance to deal with it when it does. So the ego likes everything to stay the same. As soon as we start to grow, the ego is going to create problems for us like delay, excuses. It'll even go so far as to create problems in external reality and work through other people. This is one of the reasons why you want to be surrounded by positive people. If you're surrounded by people who are jealous of you, who are insecure, people who are dabbling in the ego and the shadow side of life, then they aren't going to be able to support you. And when they see you start to change, they will feel threatened. They will then try to sabotage you in a number of different ways. So here is where I encourage you to ask yourself if you're honored by the company you keep. Is the company that you're keeping company that's going to support you through change and growth? Are the habits that you've got going on in your day-to-day life going to allow you to endorse, support, and sustain change and growth? When we take a step back and look at our lifestyle, when we look at the way that we talk to ourselves, when we look at the company that we keep, we start to find that there's a number of different things that we could change that would definitely enhance self-support for self-sustaining growth. Remembering that the ego's job is to try to keep things the same. That's what the ego does. So we know that the ego is going to rise up. We know that the ego is going to try to challenge us in a number of different ways. And we think ahead. We prepare in advance. So when the ego comes up with an excuse, you can go, no, I practice self-respect and self-trust. So I made a promise to myself that I'm going to do this particular thing today. I'm going to do this thing today. I made a promise to myself. And being in integrity means to be whole. So in integrity, when we make a promise to ourselves, we keep it. So practicing integrity is one of the tools to overcome self-sabotage. Also, keeping a daily journal of positivity in your life. I call this a love list. Keeping track of all the growth that you achieve, even down to the tiniest little detail, can do a lot for supporting the ego. It's kind of like throwing a dog a bone. When we validate the ego, when we pat it on the head and say, there, good ego, thank you, you helped make this growth happen, the ego starts to feel safe, much like a little child. When a little child is being asked to step outside of its comfort zone, we automatically rally around the child. We want to make the child feel comfortable and safe, and we show the child and encourage the child with validation and support. It's the same thing for our ego. So if you're trying to make change happen in your life, start to see your ego like a 2-year-old child. Support the ego. Validate the ego daily. Recognizing even in tiny, tiny little baby steps that you are making progress. Encouraging your ego to see that change doesn't need to be a threat, that it isn't something to be afraid of. And over time, you'll see that your ego will start to respond and cooperate. I've reached a point in my life where I can recognize when my ego is trying to come up, and I don't allow it. And therefore, the ego doesn't even bother to do the sabotaging things that it used to do. It knows that it won't get away with it because I have integrity. I practice self-respect, self-love, and self-trust. So the next time you're beating yourself up for self-sabotage, Don't beat yourself up. Recognize it's your ego unconsciously doing the job that it's designed to do. Your job is to parent your ego in a sense. Allow it to see that it's doing a good job. Validate it. Tiny steps, baby steps, every day, practicing self-love. Give yourself credit. Give your ego credit for cooperating. Have a good day.